The massive doors of the council chamber opened with a sound that echoed through the vast hall. Captain Daewon walked forward with steady steps, his uniform crisp and clean. Beside him, Ambassador Hyojin moved with equal confidence, though her heart was beating fast. They had traveled across half the galaxy to reach this place, to stand before the beings who controlled the fate of civilizations. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes and shapes. 12 pedestals rose from the floor in a perfect circle, each one holding a representative from the ancient races. The Velnari sat highest, their blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. The Korthan delegation whispered among themselves with voices like grinding stones. The Silithine floated in their containment spheres, their gas forms swirling with colors that showed their emotions. Daewon had faced combat before. He had commanded ships in battle and made decisions that saved lives or ended them. But this was different. Here his weapons meant nothing. Here only words had power, and he was not skilled with words. That was why Hyojin stood beside him. The Velnari Prime Speaker, Tholmec, raised one long arm. The chamber fell silent immediately. His voice was deep and ancient, carrying the weight of thousands of years. The human delegation may present their final statement before this council delivers its judgment. Hyojin stepped forward. She had prepared this speech for months, refining every word and phrase. Honored council members, humanity comes before you with respect and hope. We have shown ourselves to be peaceful traders and honest partners. We seek only to join the galactic community as full members, to share in the knowledge and prosperity that you have built together. She spoke of Earth's achievements, of the colonies humanity had built on Mars and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. She talked about human art, music, and culture. She showed records of humanitarian aid that Earth had provided to other species. She made the case that humanity deserved a place among the stars. When she finished, there was silence. Daewon watched the council members carefully, trying to read their alien expressions. He saw nothing that gave him hope. Tholmec stood from his pedestal. We have reviewed your petition thoroughly. We have observed your species for 3 of your decades. We have consulted our historical records and our philosophers. We have debated among ourselves with great care. The Prime Speaker's next words fell like hammer blows. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity is denied full membership status. Furthermore, effective immediately, all human trading privileges are revoked. All colonization rights beyond your home system are cancelled. Access to the Galactic Jumpgate network is forbidden. Hyojin's face went pale. Prime Speaker, surely there must be some misunderstanding. We have met every requirement you set before us. The requirements were met, Tholmec agreed. But requirements alone do not determine worthiness. We have studied your history, Ambassador. We have seen your wars, your conflicts, your inability to maintain peace even among your own kind. In the mere 300 years since you developed industrial technology, you have fought 2 global wars and countless smaller ones. A Korthan delegate leaned forward, its rocky features harsh. Your species adapts too quickly. You learn too fast. You take technology and improve it beyond what should be possible for such a young race. This adaptability is dangerous. The Silithian representative's sphere pulsed with orange light. Its translated voice was cold. In galactic terms, you are infants. Infants with nuclear weapons and faster-than-light ships. Infants who do not understand the delicate balance of power that maintains peace among the stars. Daewon could not stay silent any longer. With respect, council members, is this not exactly the kind of prejudice that your charter claims to reject? You judge us not for what we have done, but for what you fear we might do. Tholmec's eyes fixed on the captain. We judge you on probability and precedent. Every species that has shown your level of aggression and adaptability has either destroyed itself or become a threat to others. We will not allow the latter to occur. You are confining us to our own solar system, Hyojin said, her voice tight with controlled anger. You are cutting us off from trade, from knowledge, from growth. You are sentencing humanity to slow stagnation. We are ensuring the safety of the galaxy, Tholmec replied. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when your species has matured, we will revisit this decision. Until then, humanity will remain within the borders of your home system. Any attempt to violate this quarantine will be met with force. The Prime Speaker raised his arm again. This council session is concluded. The human delegation will be escorted to their ship and given safe passage to the edge of the Sol system. After that, you are on your own. Daewon and Hyojin stood frozen for a moment, unable to fully process what had just happened. Then guards appeared, alien beings in armor that gleamed with energy shields. They gestured toward the exit with weapons that hummed with barely contained power. As they walked back through those massive doors, Daewon looked back one final time at the council. He saw no sympathy in those alien faces, no regret. They had made their decision and would not reconsider. On the ship returning to Earth, Hyejin sat in silence, staring at nothing. Daewon stood at the viewport watching the stars slip past. Somewhere out there was home, a blue marble of a planet that now seemed further away than ever. "What do we tell them?" Hyejin finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do we explain that we have been cast out before we even truly joined?" Daewon had no answer. He only knew that everything had changed. Humanity had reached for the stars and been slapped down. The question now was whether they would accept this judgment or defy it. He suspected he already knew the answer. Humans had never been good at accepting limits. 3 years had passed since the Council's verdict, and Earth felt smaller every day. The jump gates that once connected humanity to distant markets now stood locked and silent. The trade ships that used to arrive weekly no longer came. The galaxy had turned its back, and humanity was learning what isolation truly meant. On Mars Colony 7, Director Bora walked through the underground laboratories, her footsteps echoing in the metal corridors. The facility had been built with materials from off-world, materials they could no longer get. When something broke now, they had to make do with Earth metals and recycled parts. Everything was running on minimal power to conserve their dwindling fusion cells. Bora stopped at a workstation where a piece of Velnari technology sat partially disassembled. Her team had been trying to understand it for 18 months. The device was a power regulator, something the aliens made by the thousands. It was simple by their standards, but humanity was still struggling to replicate it. "Any progress?" she asked the engineer hunched over the device. He looked up with tired eyes. "I think I understand the basic principle now. But the materials we need do not exist on Earth or Mars. The Velnari use a crystalline structure that forms naturally on their home world. We would need to grow it artificially, and that requires equipment we do not have." Bora nodded slowly. This was the pattern repeated across every project. They could understand the alien technology, but making it themselves was another matter entirely. Without access to galactic markets and knowledge bases, every step forward took months instead of days. She moved on to the next lab, where her best team was working on propulsion systems. The faster-than-light drives that humanity had purchased from alien traders were breaking down. Soon travel even within the solar system would take weeks instead of days. They needed to learn how to build these drives themselves, but the technology was complex beyond anything humanity had created. Far above Mars, in the space stations orbiting Jupiter, Admiral Taesung reviewed reports from his fleet commanders. The news was not good. 2 more ships had been attacked by Krellian pirates near the asteroid belt. The pirates knew that humanity no longer had the protection of galactic law. They could raid human ships without fear of Council intervention. Taesung had consolidated Earth's defense fleet, pulling ships from exploration duty and scientific missions, everything now focused on protection. But his fleet was small, just 200 ships scattered across the entire solar system. Before the embargo, that had seemed sufficient. Now it felt dangerously inadequate. A young officer approached his command chair. "Admiral, incoming ship near Saturn. It is broadcasting a distress signal." "Pull up the details," Taesung ordered. The screen showed a small cargo vessel under attack by 3 Krellian raiders. The cargo ship was one of humanity's, carrying supplies from Titan to Earth. "Send the nearest patrol," he said, though he knew they would not arrive in time. The distances were too great and his ships were already stretched too thin. He watched helplessly as the cargo ship's shields failed and the raiders began boarding. 10 minutes later, something changed. A new ship appeared on the scanners, moving incredibly fast. It was a human fighter, a small one-person craft that should not have been anywhere near Saturn. The fighter dove straight at the raiders with reckless speed. "Who is that pilot?" Taesung demanded. The communications officer checked. "Lieutenant Jiwoo, sir. She was supposed to be on patrol near the rings, but it looks like she broke formation to respond to the distress call." Taesung watched as the tiny fighter weaved between the larger raider ships. Jiwoo's flying was brilliant, using every bit of speed and agility her small craft possessed. She targeted the raiders' weapon systems with precise shots, disabling their ability to fire on the cargo ship. The raiders, surprised by the fierce resistance, decided the cargo was not worth the fight. They disengaged and jumped away. The cargo ship was damaged but intact and no lives were lost. "Get me Lieutenant Jiwoo on communications," Taesung said. When her face appeared on the screen, young and determined, he studied her for a moment. "That was either very brave or very foolish, Lieutenant." "Sir, I could not let them take our people without a fight," she replied. Taesung felt a mix of frustration and pride. "You disobeyed orders by leaving your patrol route. But you also saved lives and drove off pirates who thought humanity was easy prey. I will put a commendation in your file alongside the reprimand." "Thank you, sir," Jiwoo said, and there was no apology in her voice. She would do it again, Taesung knew, orders or no orders. That was the human spirit the Council had feared. On Earth, in the massive assembly halls of New Seoul, Wonshik addressed a crowd of thousands. His voice carried through speakers to millions more watching on screens around the world. "They call us dangerous," Wonshik said, his words ringing with passion. "They say we adapt too quickly, that we learn too fast, that we cannot be trusted with the freedom of the galaxy. And what is their solution? To cage us in our own home, to cut us off from progress and knowledge, to watch us struggle and suffer while they enjoy the prosperity we are denied." The crowd roared its approval. Wonshik raised his hands for silence. "I say we show them what humanity really is, not by submitting, not by begging for their acceptance, but by thriving despite their embargo. We will build our own technology. We will grow stronger within these boundaries they have set, and one day they will look at us and realize they made a terrible mistake." Across Earth and all its colonies, Wonshik's words sparked something. Hope mixed with defiance, determination mixed with anger. People who had felt helpless now felt purpose. If the galaxy would not help them, they would help themselves. In her lab on Mars, Bora watched Wonshik's speech on a small screen. She thought about the alien technology on her workbenches, the puzzles they could not yet solve. Then she thought about human history, about how humanity had always found ways to overcome impossible challenges. She turned back to her work with renewed energy. They would figure it out. They had to, because the alternative was accepting the Council's judgment, and that was something humanity would never do. Admiral Taesung, watching the same speech from his flagship, nodded to himself. The Council thought they were protecting the galaxy from humanity. They did not understand that by isolating humans, they might have created the very threat they feared. A caged animal became dangerous. A cornered enemy became fierce. 3 years of isolation had taught humanity an important lesson. They could not rely on anyone but themselves. And that realization, more than any technology or weapon, would change everything. The ice caves beneath Titan's surface were ancient beyond human understanding. Dr. Yuna had been exploring them for 6 months, part of a geological survey team studying the moon's composition. They were supposed to be looking for water ice and mineral deposits. What she found instead would change everything. The tunnel descended deeper than their scanners had shown. Yuna's team moved carefully, their lights cutting through the darkness. The ice here was different, compressed by millions of years, and something else, something that created geometric patterns too precise to be natural. "Doctor, you need to see this," called out Minho, one of her assistants. He stood at the edge of a massive chamber, his light barely reaching the opposite wall. Yuna approached and felt her breath catch. The chamber was enormous, easily 100 meters across, but size was not what made her heart race. The walls were covered in structures, machines, devices that hummed with dormant power, despite sitting here for ages beyond counting. She stepped onto the chamber floor and immediately noticed it was not ice. It was metal, or something like metal that her scanner could not identify. The material was warm under her gloved hand, maintaining temperature in defiance of the frozen environment around it. "Start documenting everything," Yuna ordered, her voice shaking with excitement. "Full scans, photographs, video. We need a complete record before we touch anything." As her team spread out through the chamber, Yuna approached the nearest structure. It was roughly rectangular, about 3 meters tall, covered in symbols that glowed faintly blue. The symbols were not like any alien language she had studied. They had a different quality, a different logic. She reached out carefully and touched the surface. The structure responded immediately. Panels slid open, revealing screens that lit up with information. The symbols began rearranging themselves, shifting and changing until suddenly they were readable. English. The ancient device was translating itself for her. "This is not possible," Una whispered. But the evidence was right in front of her eyes. The screen showed star maps, but not the galaxy as humanity knew it. This was the galaxy millions of years ago, with different configurations of stars and different planetary systems. The information was vast, overwhelming. Physics equations that went far beyond human understanding. Designs for machines that seemed to manipulate space itself. But what truly shocked Una was the biological data. Genetic sequences appeared on the screen, and her scanner confirmed they were similar to human DNA. Not identical, but close enough to suggest a relationship. The ancient builders of this place had been humanoid, possibly human ancestors. She immediately contacted Captain Day-Wan, who was now fleet commander after his promotion following the Council's verdict. The transmission took several minutes to reach his flagship orbiting Earth. When Day-Wan's face appeared on her screen, Una spoke quickly. "Commander, I am sending you data from Titan. You need to see this immediately. We have found structures, technology, evidence of an ancient civilization, and there are strong indications that this civilization might be connected to humanity." Day-Wan leaned forward, his expression intense. "Connected how?" "The genetic markers suggest a common ancestry," Una explained. "Either we are descended from them, or they seeded our DNA on Earth deliberately. The technology here is millions of years old, Commander. It is more advanced than anything the Galactic Council possesses." There was a long pause as Day-Wan processed this information. "How much of this technology can we access?" "I have barely started exploring," Una said. "But the systems are responding to human touch and translating themselves for us. It is as if they were designed to be found by humans specifically." "Commander, this could change everything." "Secure the site," Day-Wan ordered. "I am sending additional security and a team of scientists. Do not let anyone else know about this until we understand what we have found." But secrets on Titan did not stay secret for long. The Council had intelligence networks throughout human space, spies and informants who reported anything unusual. Within days, whispers began spreading through the galaxy about a discovery on Titan. Back on Mars, Bora received a data packet from Una. When she opened it and saw the schematics, she could barely believe what she was reading. Energy generation systems that produced power from quantum vacuum fluctuations. Propulsion designs that folded space instead of just moving through it. Defensive shields that operated on principles humanity had only theorized about. She assembled her best engineers immediately. "We have new technology to study," she told them. "And this time we have complete schematics. We can actually build this." The work began immediately. Unlike the alien technology they had been struggling with, this ancient technology was different. The design seemed to account for human thinking, human limitations, human manufacturing capabilities. It was as if the ancient builders had known their descendants would need help. Within weeks, Bora's team achieved breakthroughs that should have taken years. They built a prototype power generator that produced 10 times more energy than their fusion reactors. They created shield emitters that could withstand weapons fire that would have destroyed their old ships. They designed propulsion systems that did not require the rare materials from alien worlds. But progress came with a price. The Galactic Council learned about the discoveries through their networks. Emergency sessions were called on the Council station. The Velnari were particularly disturbed by the news. Their entire identity was built on being the oldest, most advanced species. The idea that humans might be connected to an even more ancient race threatened their worldview. Ambassador He-Jin, still on Earth after the failed petition 3 years ago, received an official communication from the Council. The message was short and absolute. The Galactic Council demands immediate surrender of all ancient artifacts and technology found on Titan. These materials fall under Preservation Protocol 7, which states that technology from extinct civilizations must be controlled by the Council to prevent misuse. Humanity has 72 hours to comply. He-Jin read the message twice, then forwarded it to Day-Wan and Earth's president. The response came quickly. Earth would not surrender the technology. It belonged to humanity, possibly was meant for humanity. The Council had no right to demand it. The reply was sent and everyone knew what it meant. The Council had isolated humanity with an embargo. Now they would have to decide whether they were willing to enforce their demand with force. On Titan, Una continued her work, racing against time, She explored deeper into the ancient complex, finding more chambers, more devices, more knowledge. In one chamber, she found what looked like a library. Data cores containing information about the ancient civilization. She learned their story. They called themselves the progenitors. They had spread across the galaxy millions of years ago, building great works and seeking knowledge. They had faced a threat from beyond the galaxy, something terrible that consumed entire civilizations. They had fought a long war and won, but at terrible cost. Before their civilization fell, they had seeded genetic material on promising worlds, hoping their descendants would carry on their legacy. Earth was one of those worlds. Humanity was not just connected to the progenitors. Humanity was their children, their hope for the future. The progenitors had left behind their technology, their knowledge, and their weapons. They had built these caches throughout the galaxy, hidden and waiting. They knew their descendants would face challenges, would need help. The cache on Titan was just one of many. Una recorded everything, her hands shaking as she documented the greatest discovery in human history. They were not just a young species struggling to find their place. They were the heirs of the first great civilization, inheritors of a legacy that predated the Council by millions of years. When she sent her findings to Daewon, she added one more piece of information. Commander, the progenitors left weapons, not just defensive systems, but weapons designed to fight threats to entire civilizations. If the Council tries to take this by force, we can defend ourselves. The 72-hour deadline passed without humanity surrendering anything. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, their chambers filled with angry voices and worried whispers. For the first time in thousands of years, a species had openly defied their direct command. Ambassador Hye-jin watched the proceedings through a remote link from Earth. She had not been invited to speak, but the Council allowed her to observe as they debated humanity's fate. The discussion was not going well. Tholmek stood at his pedestal, his blue skin darker than usual with agitation. The humans have rejected our lawful demand. They claim ownership of technology that belongs to all civilized species. This cannot be tolerated. A Korthan delegate added, his voice rough as grinding stone. We showed mercy 3 years ago by simply quarantining them. That mercy was clearly a mistake. They have used this time to grow stronger, more dangerous. We must act now before they become a true threat. The Silithine representative's containment sphere pulsed with red light, indicating agreement. Our intelligence suggests they have already reverse-engineered some of the ancient technology. They are building new ships with capabilities that rival our own. In months, they may surpass us. Not all voices called for aggression. The Nasari delegate, a small being with golden skin, spoke carefully. Should we not consider that if the ancient technology responds to humans, perhaps it was meant for them? The genetic evidence suggests a direct connection. Irrelevant, Tholmek snapped. Whether they are descendants of this ancient race or not, does not give them the right to possess weapons and technology that could destabilize the entire galactic order. We have maintained peace for 10,000 years by ensuring no single species holds overwhelming power. The vote came swiftly. The Council authorized a military coalition to enforce their demand. 3 species volunteered immediately: the Velnari, the Korthan, and the Silithine. They would assemble their fleets and give humanity one final chance to surrender. If refused, they would take the technology by force. On Earth, Fleet Commander Daewon received the news with grim acceptance. He had known this was coming. The Council could not allow their authority to be challenged so openly. Now humanity would face the consequences of their defiance. He called an emergency meeting of his commanders. Admiral Tae-sung joined via link from his flagship. Bora connected from Mars. Una appeared from Titan, exhausted but determined. Wonshik represented Earth's civilian government. Together they planned humanity's defense. The coalition is assembling at the edge of our system, Daewon reported. Current estimates suggest they will have 3,000 ships. We have 217 combat-ready vessels plus the new prototypes. The numbers were devastating. Even with better technology, humanity was outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Admiral Tae-sung studied the tactical displays with a frown. We cannot win a direct engagement, he said bluntly. Our only advantage is that we are defending. We know this system better than they do, and we have the ancient defensive platforms that Una discovered. Bora spoke up from Mars. My team has completed work on the new ship class. We call it the Defiance. It incorporates the ancient shield technology and weapon systems. We have built 5 of them. They are small compared to capital ships, but their firepower is extraordinary. 5 ships against 3,000, Wanshik said quietly. Those are not odds that inspire confidence. No, Daewon agreed. But we are not surrendering. The Council wants to take what belongs to us. They want to keep us weak and controlled. If we give in now, we will always be under their authority. On Mars, in the military shipyards, engineer Hyunwoo made final checks on the lead ship of the Defiance class. The vessel was sleek and deadly, smaller than traditional warships but packed with technology that would shock the Council species. The shields could absorb damage that would vaporize ordinary ships. The weapons could punch through any armor currently in use, but 5 ships were not enough. Hyunwoo knew it and everyone else knew it. Still, they had built what they could in the time available. Now they would have to hope it was sufficient. Lieutenant Jiwoo was promoted to squadron commander and given command of the new fighter wings. The ancient technology had provided designs for fighters far superior to anything humanity had built before. They were faster, more agile, and packed weapons that could damage ships 100 times their size. Jiwoo trained her pilots day and night. Many were young, barely out of the academy, but they had the fire that humanity was known for, the refusal to quit even when facing impossible odds. She drilled them on tactics, on coordination, on the aggressive flying style that would be their only advantage. The coalition ships are bigger and stronger, she told her pilots during one training session, but they are also slower and less maneuverable. We hit them fast, target their weapons and engines, then get out before they can respond. We make them afraid to chase us because we punish every mistake they make. Meanwhile, on Earth, a diplomatic officer named Subin tried one last time to find a peaceful solution. She reached out to contacts in the Nesseri delegation, the one species that had shown some sympathy for humanity's position. You know this is wrong, Subin said during a private communication. The Council claims to value justice and fairness, but they are preparing to attack us simply for refusing to surrender our own heritage. The Nesseri diplomat, whose name translated roughly as Gentle Wind, responded with sadness in his voice. I agree with you, Subin, but I am one voice among many. The Council is afraid. They have built their power on being the supreme authority. Your discovery threatens that authority. Fear makes people act in ways that contradict their stated values. Then help us stop this, Subin pleaded. Speak against the military action. Convince others to stand down. I have tried, Gentle Wind said, but the Velnari are driving this action, and they have great influence. They see your ancient heritage as a threat to their position as the galaxy's eldest race. This is about pride as much as security. The conversation ended without resolution. Subin reported back to Ambassador Haye-jin, who could only shake her head in frustration. Diplomacy had failed. Now only military strength would determine humanity's future. The coalition fleet assembled at the outer edge of the solar system, just beyond where Pluto's orbit would take it. 3,000 ships arranged in formation, their weapons powered and shields active. They sent one final message to Earth. Humanity has 24 hours to begin transferring all ancient technology to Council custody. All research must stop immediately. The Titan site will be placed under Council authority. Failure to comply will result in military action to enforce this decree. The Council has spoken. Daewon read the message aboard his flagship, the carrier Justice. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, making final preparations. Through the viewport, he could see other human ships taking up defensive positions. The 5 Defiance-class ships held the center of the formation, their new armor gleaming under the distant sun. He opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. This is Fleet Commander Daewon. In a few hours, we will face an enemy that outnumbers us greatly. They believe we will surrender when confronted with superior force. They believe we will choose safety over freedom. They do not understand humanity. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. 3 years ago, the Council rejected us. They called us too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Maybe they were right. Maybe we are dangerous. But we are dangerous because we refuse to accept chains, refuse to bow to authority that rules through fear. We fight not because we want war, but because we will not accept slavery. Across the fleet, from the largest carriers to the smallest fighters, human crews listened to their commander's words. Some were afraid. All were determined. The Council thinks this will be easy, Daewon continued. They think we will break quickly when we see their power. Let us show them what humanity really is. Let us show them that some cages cannot hold certain spirits. All ships, battle stations. We defend our home. The 24 hours began counting down. The coalition did not wait the full 24 hours. Perhaps they thought surprise would give them an advantage. Perhaps they simply did not believe humanity deserved the courtesy of a warning. Either way, the attack came early. Neptune Station was the first target. The remote outpost orbited the distant ice planet, home to 300 scientists and support staff. The Corthan heavy cruisers appeared without warning, their weapons already charging. The station's shields lasted less than a minute under the assault. Commander Daewon received the distress signal and felt rage burn through him. The station had no military value. The attack was meant to terrify, to show humanity the cost of resistance. 300 lives ended in fire and vacuum, their only crime being in the wrong place when the Council decided to demonstrate power. All ships. Defensive formation Theta, Daewon ordered, his voice cold with controlled fury. Launch all fighters. We end this here. The human fleet moved into position around Earth and Mars. They could not defend everything. Neptune was too far and Titan was deliberately left exposed. Daewon hated sacrificing Yuna's position, but he needed the coalition to come to him, to fight on ground he had prepared. The coalition fleet advanced in 3 waves. The Corthan ships led, their rocky hulls bristling with weapons. Behind them came the Velnari cruisers, sleek and fast. The Silithine dreadnoughts moved slowly in the rear, massive vessels that could destroy a planet if needed. Admiral Tae Sung coordinated the defense from his flagship. First wave entering Mars orbit in 10 minutes. Second wave 20 minutes behind them. Third wave holding position at the outer system. They are testing our defenses, Daewon observed. They expect us to break against the first wave, but they are keeping reserves in case we hold. It shows they have at least some respect for our capabilities. The Corthan ships approached Mars, confident in their numbers and strength. They did not expect the ancient defense platforms that suddenly activated around the planet. Weapons older than their civilization opened fire, beams of coherent energy that punched through shields like they did not exist. 5 Corthan ships died in the first volley. 10 more sustained heavy damage. The formation scattered in confusion, not understanding how Mars could have such powerful defenses. They had scanned the area and detected nothing unusual. That bought us time, Taesung said. But they will adapt. They always do. Lieutenant Jiwoo led her fighter squadron against the confused Corthan ships. Her pilots flew with precision, targeting weapons and engines with the new plasma cannons. The ancient technology made their small fighters deadly, capable of damaging vessels 100 times their size. Gold Squadron target the command ship, Jiwoo ordered. Hit their communications array. Make them blind. Her squadron dove toward the Corthan flagship, weaving through defensive fire with skill that bordered on reckless. The flagship's point defense systems tried to track them, but the human fighters were too fast, too agile. They struck the communications tower with concentrated fire, severing the command ship's ability to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. The Corthan formation fell into chaos. Without clear orders, each ship fought independently. The human fleet pressed the advantage, the 5 Defiance-class ships leading the charge. Their new weapons cut through Corthan armor like it was paper. But victory against the first wave was temporary. The Velnari second wave approached rapidly, and they had learned from watching the Corthan failure. They spread out, refusing to cluster where the defense platforms could destroy multiple ships at once. They moved in coordinated strike groups, each covering the others. On Titan, the attack Daewon had anticipated finally came. Silithine ships appeared in orbit, massive vessels that made the moon seem small. They demanded immediate access to the progenitor facility. Dr. Yuna stood in the control center, watching the enemy ships on her screens. She had known this moment would come. Her hand moved to the control panel, fingers hovering over ancient controls that the progenitors had left behind. "I am sorry," she whispered, though she was not sure who she was apologizing to. Then she activated the facility's self-defense systems. The progenitor technology had been dormant for millions of years, but it responded to Yuna's command as if it had been waiting. Weapons platforms emerged from the ice, weapons that made the defense platforms around Mars look primitive. They fired beams of energy that existed in multiple dimensions, bypassing shields entirely. The Silithine dreadnoughts died without understanding what killed them. Their sensors could not even detect the weapons until impact. In 3 minutes, the entire assault force was destroyed. Debris rained down on Titan's surface, burning bright against the dark sky. Back near Mars, the Velnari pressed their attack. They were better coordinated than the Korthan, more experienced in warfare. Their ships moved in perfect formation, each protecting the others from human attacks. They focused fire on single targets, overwhelming shields through concentrated assault. The human carrier Harmony took critical damage, its shields failing under the combined fire of 6 Velnari cruisers. Day 1 watched as the carrier began to break apart, escape pods launching desperately. 2,000 crew members were on that ship. Maybe half would escape. "This is not working," Admiral Tae-sung said grimly. "They are adapting too quickly. We need something they cannot predict." Engineer Hyun-woo, listening from one of the Defiance-class ships, had an idea. "Commander, the ancient technology includes a weapon we have not tested yet. It creates localized disruptions in space. I think it could disable their ships without destroying them." "How confident are you?" Daewon asked. 60%, Hyun-woo admitted. "The progenitors designed it to fight something specific, and I am not sure it will work on normal matter. But we are running out of options." Daewon made the decision in seconds. "Deploy it. Target the largest concentration of enemy ships." The Defiance fired its new weapon, a pulse of energy that looked wrong somehow, like it did not belong in normal space. The pulse expanded outward, washing over a dozen Velnari cruisers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy ships simply stopped functioning. Their engines cut out. Their weapons went silent. They drifted helplessly, not destroyed but completely disabled. The rest of the Velnari fleet hesitated, not understanding what had happened. That moment of hesitation was all humanity needed. Jiwoo's fighters struck again, targeting the disabled ship's life support. Not to kill, but to force evacuations. The Velnari crews began abandoning their useless vessels, their pride wounded but their lives intact. The Velnari commander made a tactical decision. He withdrew the second wave, pulling back to regroup with the third wave. The battle had not gone as expected. The Council fleet had superior numbers, but humanity had weapons and tactics they could not counter. The withdrawal gave both sides time to reassess. Day 1 studied the tactical displays, counting losses. Humanity had lost 8 ships and thousands of lives. The Coalition had lost perhaps 30 vessels and many more lives. By raw numbers, the Coalition was still winning. But they had expected an easy victory, and humanity had shown them otherwise. Bora transmitted from Mars. "Commander, we have a problem. The ancient defense platforms are running out of power. The progenitors designed them to be maintained, but they have been dormant for millions of years. We might get one more full-power volley, maybe 2. How long until they run completely dry?" Day 1 asked. 6 hours, maybe 8. That was the window. If the Coalition pushed their attack within that time, the defense platforms would fail. Earth and Mars would be vulnerable. Humanity would lose their greatest advantage. On Earth, Wanshik addressed the population. His speech was broadcast to every colony, every station, every ship. "The enemy has retreated, but they will return. They have more ships than we do. But what they do not have is our determination, our refusal to accept defeat. The Council wants us to surrender, to bow to their authority. We have shown them what we think of their authority." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Some of you are afraid. That is natural. But remember this. We fight for our right to exist as free beings. We fight for our children's future. We fight because the alternative is slavery to an authority that fears us for our potential. And I say to the Council, if you fear what we might become, you should fear even more what we are now. We are humanity, and we do not break." In the command center of the Coalition fleet, Tholmek met with his commanders. The Velnari Prime Speaker had taken personal command of the operation, something unheard of in recent history. His presence showed how seriously the Council took this challenge. "The humans have surprised us," Tholmek admitted. "Their technology is indeed formidable. But technology alone does not win wars. We still outnumber them greatly. We will regroup, develop countermeasures to their weapons, and attack again. This time, we will not underestimate them." The Coalition prepared for the second assault, but something had changed. They had come expecting to crush a minor species. Instead, they had been bloodied. their ships destroyed by vessels and weapons they did not understand. Fear began to creep into their calculations. The brief respite ended when Dr. Yuna made another discovery in the progenitor archives. She had been searching through the data cores trying to find more weapons, more defenses, anything that could help humanity survive. What she found was far more disturbing than helpful. She connected directly to Fleet Commander Daewon, her face pale on the screen. "Commander, you need to see this immediately." The progenitors left extensive records about why they built all of this technology, about what they were fighting. Daewon had been studying tactical displays, planning defensive strategies. But something in Yuna's voice made him stop. "What did they fight, Doctor?" Yuna sent him a data file. When Daewon opened it, he saw images that his mind struggled to process. Entities that existed partially outside normal space. Beings that consumed matter and energy, leaving nothing behind. The progenitors had called them the Devourers. They came from outside the galaxy, Yuna explained, her words tumbling out rapidly. The progenitors fought them for thousands of years. It was the greatest war in galactic history, and it almost destroyed all life everywhere. The progenitors won, but barely. They sealed the Devourers away in a dimensional prison. "Why are you telling me this now?" Daewon asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Because the seals are failing," Yuna said quietly. "The progenitors knew this would happen eventually. That is why they seeded our DNA on Earth. That is why they left the weapons and technology. They knew their descendants would face the Devourers again. Commander, this was all planned. We are not just inheriting the progenitor legacy. We are inheriting their war." Daewon closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of this revelation. Humanity was fighting the Council for survival, and now he learned that an even greater threat was coming. "How long do we have?" The archives show the first seal breach happened 3 days ago. A Devourer scout probe entered the galaxy. It will be searching for populated worlds. Yuna pulled up more data. The progenitors built warning systems throughout the galaxy. I can access them. When the probe approaches civilized space, we will know. "Share this information with Ambassador He-Jin," Daewon ordered. "The Council needs to know what is coming." He-Jin received the data and immediately requested an emergency connection to the Galactic Council. It took hours to establish, as the Council was focused on the military campaign against humanity. When the connection finally opened, Tolmec's face appeared, his expression showing annoyance at the interruption. "Ambassador, we have nothing to discuss until your species surrenders," he said coldly. "Prime Speaker, humanity has discovered information about an existential threat to the entire galaxy," He-Jin said, speaking quickly. "The progenitors, the ancient race that left technology on Titan, they fought a war against entities called the Devourers. These beings consume entire worlds. The progenitors sealed them away, but those seals are failing. We need to stop fighting each other and prepare for what is coming." Tolmec's expression did not change. "This is clearly a desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of your defiance. The Council will not be distracted by fabricated threats. I am sending you the data," He-Jin insisted. "Look at it. Analyze it. The progenitors left extensive records. The threat is real." "Even if this threat exists," Tolmec replied, "it only reinforces why the ancient technology must be under Council control. You humans cannot be trusted with weapons meant to fight galaxy-level threats. Surrender now and we will protect you from whatever may come." The connection terminated. He-Jin stared at the blank screen, feeling frustration and fear war within her. The Council would not listen. They were too focused on maintaining their authority to see the real danger approaching. The warning came 2 days later. The progenitor detection systems that Yuna had activated picked up an anomaly entering Velnari space. The Devourer scout probe had found the galaxy's most populous species first. Within hours, 3 Velnari colonies went silent. No distress calls, no warnings, just sudden absence where thriving civilizations had existed moments before. Rescue ships rushed to investigate and found nothing. The planets were simply gone, as if they had never existed. Only empty space remained where they had orbited their stars. The news hit the Galactic Council like a physical blow. The Velnari, who had been so confident in their superiority, suddenly faced an enemy that could erase their worlds without effort. Panic spread through the council chambers. Tolmec, shaken but still stubborn, ordered the coalition fleet to defend Velnari space. But as ships moved to intercept the anomaly, Heejin sent another message to the council. "Your weapons will not work against the Devourers," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "The progenitors designed specific technology to fight them. That technology is what you have been trying to take from us. Without it, you cannot defeat this threat." The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some demanded humanity's immediate surrender, so the progenitor weapons could be used to defend the galaxy. Others, particularly the Nasari delegate, argued that cooperation rather than conquest was needed. Fleet Commander Day Wan made an offer that shocked everyone. He transmitted it directly to the entire council, bypassing diplomatic channels. "The Galactic Council has spent the last 3 years keeping humanity isolated. You ruled against us, denied us membership, and now attack us to take what is rightfully ours. But despite all of this, we are willing to help." He paused, knowing his next words would define humanity's future. "We will share the progenitor technology freely. No conditions, no demands for payment or concessions. We will share it because the alternative is the death of all civilized species. But in return, we require full council membership and an immediate end to hostilities." The silence that followed was profound. Tolmec struggled with the decision. Accepting humanity's offer meant admitting the council had been wrong. It meant elevating a species they had deemed too dangerous to join them. It meant fundamentally changing the power structure of the galaxy. But as another Velnari world vanished, consumed by the Devourer probe, the choice became clear. Pride was worthless if extinction was the alternative. "The Galactic Council accepts humanity's offer," Tolmec finally said, each word clearly difficult for him to speak. "The embargo is lifted. Hostilities will cease immediately. Humanity is granted full membership status. We will face this threat together." The Coalition fleet received orders to stand down. Human and alien ships, which had been trying to destroy each other hours before, now began coordinating defensive positions. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but necessity drove cooperation. Bora began transmitting the progenitor technology to council scientists. Engineer Hyunwoo worked with Korthan engineers to retrofit their ships with the specialized shields needed to survive Devourer weapons. Lieutenant Jiwoo trained mixed squadrons of human and alien pilots in coordinated tactics. The work happened at frantic pace because the Devourer probe was moving through the galaxy, consuming worlds as it went. Every day brought news of another lost colony, another dead civilization. The probe seemed random in its path, but it was clearly moving toward more populated regions. Admiral Tae-sung took command of a joint task force, the first time in galactic history that a human led council military forces. He organized the fleet at the Epsilon Nebula, where projections showed the Devourer probe would pass. It was time to test whether the progenitor weapons could actually defeat the threat they were designed for. On Earth, Wanshik addressed humanity one more time. "The council that ruled against us now calls us allies. The species that attacked us now ask for our help. Some of you may feel anger at this. You have the right to that anger. But remember what the progenitors taught us through their legacy. They faced extinction and chose to ensure life would continue, even if they could not see it themselves. We will do the same." As the combined fleet gathered, Daewon stood on the bridge of his flagship, now designated as the command ship for the entire operation. Around him were officers from a dozen different species, all working together for the first time. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. 3 years ago, humanity had been rejected and isolated. Now they were leading the defense of the galaxy. The council had feared humanity's potential, and perhaps they had been right to fear it. But potential could be used for protection as much as destruction. The Devourer probe entered the Epsilon Nebula, and humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The combined fleet waited in the Epsilon Nebula, thousands of ships from a dozen species arranged in defensive formations. They had practiced coordinated maneuvers for only 3 days. It was not nearly enough time, but time was a luxury they did not have. Fleet Commander Daewon studied the tactical displays showing the Devourer probe's approach. The entity moved through space in ways that violated known physics, appearing and disappearing as it traveled. Where it passed, stars dimmed as if the universe itself was being consumed. "All ships report ready status," Admiral Tae-sung announced from his position coordinating fleet movements. Next to him stood a Velnari admiral and a Korthan commander, an alliance that would have been impossible just days before. The Devourer probe entered the nebula, and everyone saw it clearly for the first time. It was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a tear in reality, a wound in space that radiated wrongness. Sensors struggled to focus on it, readings fluctuating wildly as the entity shifted between dimensions. "Deploy progenitor shields," Daewon ordered. Across the fleet, ancient technology activated, creating barriers that existed in multiple dimensions. The shields were the only thing that could protect them from the Devourer's attacks. The entity seemed to notice the fleet. It changed direction, moving directly toward them with increasing speed. As it approached, reality around it began to distort. Ships on the outer edge of the formation reported systems malfunctions as space itself became unstable. "Forward ships. Open fire with progenitor weapons," Admiral Taesung commanded. Energy beams that existed partially outside normal space lanced toward the Devourer. Unlike conventional weapons, these actually hit the entity, causing visible distortions in its form. The Devourer recoiled, seemingly surprised that something could hurt it. But the entity adapted quickly. It split into multiple smaller forms, each one targeting a different section of the fleet. The formation began to break apart as captains maneuvered to avoid the approaching threats. "Maintain formation," Daewon called out firmly. "If we scatter, we lose the advantage of coordinated fire. All ships focus on the largest fragment. We destroy them one at a time." Lieutenant Jiwoo led the fighter squadrons in close attack runs. Her mixed group of human and alien pilots worked together smoothly, the training paying off despite the short preparation time. They targeted the smaller Devourer fragments with precision strikes using the progenitor weapons mounted on their fighters. "Gold leader to all fighters," Jiwoo transmitted. "These things adapt to attack patterns. Keep changing your approach angles. Do not let them predict where you will be." The battle became chaotic as the Devourer fragments weaved through the fleet, attacking ships from unexpected angles. A Korthan cruiser took a direct hit and simply ceased to exist, not exploding but vanishing as if it had never been there. 500 lives gone in an instant. On Earth, billions watched the battle through live transmissions. Dr. Yuna stood in the progenitor facility on Titan, monitoring the ancient systems and providing real-time analysis to the fleet. Bora coordinated power distribution to the progenitor weapons, ensuring they maintained maximum effectiveness. Engineer Hyun Woo, aboard one of the Defiance-class ships, noticed something in the data. "Commander, the Devourer fragments are regenerating. We are damaging them, but they are repairing themselves faster than we can destroy them." Daewon processed this information quickly. "Dr. Yuna, did the progenitor archives mention this?" Yuna's response came immediately. "Yes, the Devourers are connected to a central consciousness in their home dimension. As long as that connection exists, they can regenerate indefinitely. The progenitors developed a weapon to sever that connection. It is called the Dimensional Cutter. Do we have this weapon?" Daewon asked. "The Defiance-class ships were built with it," Yuna confirmed. "But it requires enormous power and precise targeting. You only get one shot." Daewon looked at the tactical display, calculating angles and probabilities. The largest Devourer fragment was the key. If it was the main connection point to their home dimension, severing it might disable all the fragments. "All ships concentrate fire on target Alpha," he ordered. "Give the Defiance a clear shot. We are ending this now." The fleet responded, every ship targeting the largest fragment with everything they had. The Devourer entity tried to evade, but the coordinated assault pinned it in place. Jiwoo's fighters harassed the other fragments, preventing them from interfering. Hyun Woo charged the Dimensional Cutter, watching power levels climb to dangerous heights. The weapon had never been tested at full power. The progenitors had left instructions, but theory and practice were different things. "Weapon charged," he reported. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Dimensional Cutter fired, a beam of energy that looked like a slash across reality itself. It struck the largest Devourer fragment dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fragment began to unravel, its connection to the home dimension severed. Without that connection, it could not maintain its existence in normal space. The other fragments reacted immediately, trying to reconnect to their dimension. But Jiwoo's fighters were ready. They struck each fragment with coordinated volleys, preventing them from stabilizing. One by one, the Devourer fragments dissolved, unable to sustain themselves without their dimensional anchor. The last fragment vanished, and the space around the fleet began to stabilize. Reality reasserted itself, the distortions fading. On every ship from every species, a moment of stunned silence was followed by cheering. They had won. The Devourer probe was destroyed. Admiral Tae-sung allowed himself a small smile. All ships damage reports. Begin rescue operations for any survivors from damaged vessels. The victory came at a cost. 23 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of lives lost from multiple species. But the alternative would have been the destruction of the entire galaxy. The cost was terrible but necessary. On the Galactic Council station, Tholmec addressed the assembled representatives. His voice had lost much of its previous arrogance. The humans have proven themselves in battle. They led us to victory against a threat we could not have defeated alone. The Council was wrong to rule against them 3 years ago. We judged them for their potential danger, without considering their potential value. He paused, looking directly at Ambassador He-jin, who attended the session in person for the first time as a full council member. Humanity is granted full membership with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, we formally apologize for the embargo and the military action against your people. You had every right to refuse cooperation after how we treated you. That you chose to help us anyway speaks to a character we failed to recognize. He-jin stood, her posture dignified. The council ruled against humans because you feared what we might become. But fear is only useful if it teaches wisdom. You have learned that isolation and control are not the same as safety. We have learned that cooperation is stronger than defiance. Perhaps both species are wiser now. The council chamber erupted in a rare display of approval. The Nasari delegate, who had advocated for humanity from the beginning, spoke up. Ambassador He-jin, humanity has proven not only their combat capability but their moral strength. I propose we go beyond simple membership. Humanity should be granted a seat on the Security Council, with authority over defensive operations. The proposal was debated briefly, but the recent battle made the answer clear. Humanity had led the defense successfully. They understood the progenitor technology better than anyone else. The vote passed with only minor opposition. On Titan, Dr. Yuna continued exploring the progenitor archives. She discovered more information about the Devourers, including warnings about larger invasions that might come. The probe had been just a scout. Somewhere beyond the galaxy, the main Devourer forces waited, and the seals holding them back continued to weaken. She transmitted her findings to Daewon, who read them with grim determination. So this is not over. No, Yuna confirmed. The progenitors bought us time, but eventually the Devourers will break through in force. We might have years or decades, but they will come. Daewon considered this. Then we prepare. We use the time we have to build stronger defenses, to retrofit the entire galactic fleet with progenitor technology, to train every species in the tactics needed to fight this enemy. And if that is not enough, Yuna asked, then we do what the progenitors did. Daewon said firmly. We fight anyway. We adapt, we learn, we overcome. That is what humanity does. Back on Earth, Wan Shik gave his final address on the matter. The Council once ruled against humans, calling us too dangerous to join them. They were right about the danger, but wrong about the cause. We are dangerous not because we seek conflict, but because we refuse to accept defeat. We are dangerous because we adapt to any challenge and overcome any obstacle. He gestured to the stars visible through the dome above the assembly hall. The galaxy feared us. Now they rely on us. They tried to cage us. Now they look to us for leadership. This is not a victory of conquest, but a victory of proving our worth. We showed them what humanity truly is. A species that protects those who cannot protect themselves, even those who wronged us. Lieutenant Jiwoo received a promotion to wing commander, the youngest person to hold that rank in human history. She continued training pilots, now including students from Allied.